Hey guys! So guys, today I will be talking about on the MaxiAspie channel, autism and pressure tips. Now, not long ago I made a video about autism and responsibility, and some of you may be saying, well, what's the difference between pressure and responsibility? And it's not the song, so don't worry, pressure is not going to play in the background. Pressure, pushing down on me, pressing down on you. Now, how I would actually define the two and what I will be talking about in this video is, say you're in a situation where you have to make a decision, that level of pressure, that level of responsibility, but how to cope with those situations. I've talked about how you deal with responsibilities in another video, so please make sure that you check that out. But let's just say you are under a decision-making amount of pressure. You know, you're up against a time scale, you're up against the wall and you really need to do it. You know, there's not a time for my other video where I said just say no, you know, you can't. Say this situation, you really have to, you have to make a decision. You're under that level of pressure. What do? Decision making pressure. And autistic people, for my opinion, it can be really hard. I'm very indecisive. I'd like to say I can make a decision like that. Unfortunately, I can't. When it comes to decision making, I'm not very good. But these are some tips that I find in my life have helped me come to the conclusion of what I really need to do. So tip number one with pressure, believe it or not, please take your own time. I get that there's a time scale and it's drastic and it needs to be made, but don't rush into a decision that you're not comfortable with. It'll only come back to bite you. And honestly, it's better to wait those few seconds or even a minute to come to the right decision. If you don't take that time, what you're actually doing is not actually thinking, you're acting on impulse, and that's the worst thing you can do, because that's actually when a lot of bad decisions get made. So take your time. If it's 10 seconds, if it's 30 seconds, if it's a minute, take your time. I get that a decision will need to be made and it will need to be made very quickly, but don't ever make anyone pressure you or force you into making that decision right then, right now. If it's life and death, we're all put in those situations where it's like, okay, Jesus, we hope that we wouldn't be, but there are going to be times, but majority of times, unless it's life and death, you can take 5 seconds and go, hang on, I'm thinking about it. Don't be afraid to do that. Number two, as cliche as it sounds, go with your gut. Normally your gut is telling you the right thing. You know, I'd like to think a lot of the decisions I make are based on what is right, what is wrong, what I want to get out of it, what the moral complexity of it is, and try and understand all realms of that decision that you're making. And it can be tough, it can really be tough. But normally if you say, okay, I want to do this, and that person's just about to leave the room with your decision, or you're just about to implement that decision, there's a part of you that says that's not right. Go with that part, because that part is the bit that's telling you whether it's right or wrong, and that part is your gut, and that part is going to be the right moral decision. Number three, and this is where it gets really tricky and it gets really hard, especially when you're working or you're in a workplace or family or friends. People will always try and make it sound simple. Well, just do this. It's simple for other people because they're not in those shoes, they're not in that situation. They're from an outsider perspective that's just telling you to do it. And when it's their family or when it's their work relations, it's going to be a lot more complicated for them as well. So when people are saying to you, just do this, or it's simple, just do that, you know, always be wary that actually they're not in your shoes. They're thinking of it from an outside perspective. It's a decision that's not going to really affect them. And just bear that in mind when you're coming to that decision. It's not a simple one, and it probably never will be. Number four, and this is a tricky one as well, the right decision necessarily isn't always the best decision, and that's what I found. You know, I might agree to something that I really don't agree with, that I don't think should happen. And I think you'll get a lot of this when you start working. You know, for autistic people, when they start working, there's a lot of moral complex issues. You know, when I started working, I found it very hard that, you know, management would have to be treated a lot differently to, say, regular workers, because I just found, well, even the managers are regular workers, they've just got a higher title. I try in my professional career to treat everybody the same and just treat everybody's issue as urgent and do it straight away. That way I'm not sort of sacrificing my moral compass by doing one thing for one and one for the other. But it can be difficult, and for a lot of autistic people, they will have to make a lot of decisions that they may not agree with, and sometimes I'd say that that's going to happen, and don't beat yourself up about it. Just accept the fact that unfortunately sometimes that's the way that the world works, and it's something that we can always challenge and target and try to change for the better, but don't beat yourself up or sacrifice yourself over, because it's not something you're going to be able to change on your own. And number 5, and it sounds really simple, but make your own decision. Don't be influenced by other people. Ask for other people's advice and say, is this the right thing? Is that the right thing? But only you can make your own decision. The worst thing you want to do is make a decision that's really on the basis of someone else's, and then you get penalised or you get punished for making that decision when really it wasn't your own, and you would have made another one, but someone convinced you to do another one. That's the worst sort of decision. Make it your own. Stand by it, and even if you feel there's going to be a bit of backlash because of your decision, but you'll vehemently stand by it and you agree with that and you won't be told otherwise, you stand by that decision and you go for that decision. And if that's what your gut's telling you to do, then it's probably the right one. Not to say those decisions should happen all the time, because unfortunately you have to sort of pick your battles, and that's another obstacle for autistic people, is picking those battles and making sure that they're challenging the right ones. And it can be very difficult. But those are some of the tips that I use to get by in every day-to-day life. I'm still learning, but those are some tips that I would give to autistic people who are under pressure. But guys, thank you for watching as always. Tell me what you think down below. And guys, thank you for watching. Take care. Goodbye for now.